This video is made possible thanks to this week's sponsor, ExpressVPN. If you want to protect your online data and security, or like me, want to be able to bypass country locks on the likes of Netflix and YouTube, and access a wide variety of content and films like this one, stick around until the end of the video to hear all about it. Okay, thanks, bye, love you.
What I care about is telling Emily Rose's story. I want people to hear what only I can tell.
And what is that?
What really happened to Emily and why.
There is a pervasive look of pestilence to The Exorcism of Emily Rose. As a story dealing with belief and the truth, its poisonous, disease-ridden atmosphere is underpinned by something seedy and malicious, not just in its supernatural circumstances, but in the coldness and insincerity of its courtroom proceedings.
I'm here on behalf of someone who can't sit at a table and look at you every day and gain your sympathy. I stand here for Emily Rose.
Emily Rose is a film I find to be stuck in a bit of an identity crisis of trying to appease conventional horror fans while also trying to elevate itself as a mature courtroom drama.
Yes, Your Honor.
Personally, while I think it succeeds more in the latter, I'm obviously no legal expert, so I'll leave it to Legal Eagle to vouch for its attempts at authenticity. Yet, regardless, it's a story that deals with secularism in society and the disconnect between the church and the public eye, as we witness the trial of Father Richard Moore, who is being prosecuted by the state for negligent homicide after the death of 19-year-old Emily Rose following a failed exorcism.
But I hope you'll remember her as she was when she was alive. And full of hopes and dreams. And as she was when Father Richard Moore was finished with her.
Now, the subject of exorcisms has already been done and dusted by William Peter Blatty's The Exorcist to such a vast extent that it's almost impossible to find another example that brings anything new to the table. However, The Exorcism of Emily Rose can be seen as a lighter, more reductive variation of Blatty's novel, but with greater emphasis on the ambiguity and dubious details surrounding the events that led to Emily's tragic and grisly demise.
Cannot state conclusively that the cause of death was natural.
The film is structured around presenting two conflicting perspectives on what actually happened. One perceives the events as supernatural, while the other rebukes it with a logical explanation, and vice versa, without ever giving you a definitive answer as to what the truth ultimately is. The strength of director Scott Derrickson and producer Paul Harris-Borbin's script rests in how both writers collaborate their opposing viewpoints on the subject matter into a cohesive, intelligent debate that lets the audience apply their own beliefs and perspectives into the final verdict. Derrickson as a believer and Brodman as a skeptic means that the film never leans towards one perspective, thus giving the viewer a greater sense of neutrality to the story, as you're left in a sort of emotional limbo that's reflective of the parties involved. Sure, there's an argument to be said that it edges more towards the supernatural, but thankfully it never explicitly introduces it into the human side of the story, instead playing into a natural sense of doubt brought on by existentially challenging circumstances. At its core, The Exorcism of Emily Rose is a deeply melancholic story that isn't trying to be traditionally scary. While Emily is the glue that holds it all together, she's no longer here to account for the actual undeniable truth, so her story rests in the hands of characters that are strongly disconnected from her. Father Moore becomes the beacon of hope to the truth as he constantly reminds his defense lawyer Erin that the only person who can tell the true story is Emily, and so he wants to testify on her behalf using a letter she wrote prior to her death. However, he's silenced by both the legal counsel and the church as they want to keep religion out of the matter as much as possible to save face, introducing a hypocrisy in the church's complicity to defend themselves in matters that could institutionally hurt them. As a result, that coldness I mentioned earlier properly manifests itself as Emily's tragic and terrifying story becomes political. It's simply a battle to be won as opposed to bringing any real sense of justice to an innocent victim.
Facts leave no room for reasonable doubt. But this trial isn't about facts. This trial is about possibilities.
This is reinforced when those who are affected by the ordeal, such as Emily's friends, associates and family, are left out in the cold and more or less become props to each lawyer to win their battle. Thus, remembrance, mourning, great pain and sadness are overshadowed by just another job that needs to be done. As such, the way the story unfolds leads you to see Erin as the central protagonist whose journey is characterised by trials and tribulations related to her battles over ethics, agnosticism, and the plot's technical antagonist, prosecutor Ethan Thomas.
Objection.
On what grounds?
How about silliness, Your Honor?
It makes for an interesting narrative structure because you essentially have two plots that intersect each other, one being a battle between humans and skepticism, and the other being a battle between the supernatural and the unknown. The ugly side of it, however, is that all the pain and suffering Emily experienced is treated as a matter of opinion and speculation as opposed to what truly happened. Emily's story is based on the real-life exorcism of Anna Elizabeth Michel in 1976, who died of malnutrition and dehydration due to relative starvation while the exorcism was performed. Both Anna's parents and the priests responsible were charged with negligent homicide and found guilty of manslaughter, with the priests receiving a 6-month suspended sentence and 3 years of probation. During the trial, tapes were presented that were said by the priests to depict 6 different demons present in Anna, including Lucifer the Lightbringer, Cain, one of Adam and Eve's sons who killed his brother Abel, Judas the disciple who betrayed Jesus, Belial the son of Pestilence, Legion who is said to be exorcised by Jesus himself, and Nero, a Roman emperor interpreted by some as the Antichrist. The prosecution's argument, on the other hand, was simply to refute Anna's unorthodox behaviour as related to mental illness, specifically regarding her history of convulsions and seizures related to epilepsy and the abundance of medication she was prescribed that was meant to treat psychoses such as schizophrenia and delusions, which were then later attributed to her depression and deeply religious behaviour. All of this information is basically present in The Exorcism of Emily Rose to show how complicated the situation is, as all of Emily's bizarre behaviour could easily be associated with medical conditions, even if, like The Exorcist already showed, it was still all purely speculation rather than accurate diagnosis, because doctors can only theorise on individualistic matters that fall outside conventional circumstances.
This was a very sick girl.
Regardless of how you feel towards the supernatural stuff, when we consider Emily's emotional journey, the real pain of her story comes from this unending sense of oppression she experienced throughout her life. While her upbringing isn't presented as tough or troublesome, the family's religious values are implied to have always been a source of intense stress for her, as she's constantly fearful of judgment and the wrath of God, or simply the culture shock of moving away from home to go to college, where her ordeal begins. The reason I say this is because Anna Michelle was described as a religious devout and somewhat alienated from her classmates, that it was difficult to know who she was as a person. In the film, Emily's character is never truly established. I mean, this could easily just be underdeveloped characterization, but I like to think of it as a way of keeping Emily herself quite enigmatic. She is treated as a vessel for the debate, and her character becomes undermined by the case. In a way, her life is taken for granted by these people, which is reinforced by the various conflicts over her mental and physical state, where one party believe her medication stopped her from being able to fight back, while the other party believe her stopping her medication prevented her from healing. Emily herself never has a say in any of this, and when Aaron finally allows Father Moore to take the stand, he reads Emily's final letter, in which she believes she was visited by an apparition of the Virgin Mary, who gave her the choice to end her suffering and go to heaven. Except Emily chooses to endure her suffering and become a martyr. She truly commits to the purpose she feels she's been given, that God's purpose can only be good, to show the world that belief is not dead, that good and evil do exist, and maybe there is something that lies beyond our short time on this earth. Its conclusion is purely down to your own perspective on life and what you believe. While the jury declares Father Moore guilty of negligent homicide and he receives a sentence of time served, thus being able to walk away a free man, the truth is still ultimately left unanswered.
Once you've looked into the darkness, I think you carry it with you for the rest of your life.
Yet that's the point of the story that was just told. To give you closure on whether it was supernatural or not defeats the purpose of faith. One day we all face our mortality, and each of us will perceive it differently. We don't know what happens next, and in the case of Emily Rose's story, what's next could be never-ending darkness or a light at the end of the tunnel. However, in either case, while the destination is uncertain, what is certain is that we all leave a mark on this world, and that is the one thing in life that we can truly choose to define. If you enjoyed this video as much as you enjoy having complete freedom from snoopers, hackers, or anyone being able to track your online activity, then ExpressVPN is for you. A virtual private network masks your IP address and encrypts your data when you're online, so you can protect your sensitive information when online shopping, checking your bank accounts, or accessing websites that seem suspect or dubious. But for most of you, ExpressVPN is perfect for being able to bypass country locks on the likes of Netflix and YouTube. Just to prove my point, The Exorcism of Emily Rose is no longer available on the US Netflix server, but it is currently available on the UK one. So by downloading the app for your phone, tablet, computer, or whatever device you like to use, you simply select a cheeky wee country if you're choosing, click connect, and now you have all that exorcism goodness right in front of you. ExpressVPN is less than $7 a month with a 30-day money-back guarantee, so if it turns out it's not really your thing, don't worry, you'll get a full refund. Take back your internet privacy today with ExpressVPN and find out how you can get 3 months free by clicking my link in the description box below. And until next time, stay safe and I'll see you all very soon.